Good morning. Today we're going to do 6-5. It has to do with figuring out what percent something is. So if you're given a fraction, then you can switch it into a percentage. So again, it's proportional equations. So here we're in pre-algebra. I'll go to my classwork. And here I have chapter 6 assignments and 6-5. So I'll click on that and view details or view assignment, and I'll go to like instructions or whatever. And then here are the instructions. So I'm going to click those three little dots and open that in a new window so I can switch back and forth between whatever I want to. And I'll go back, press this little white back arrow, and then I'll just bring me back to the most recent page. And like if I were to press this back arrow, and that would take me all the way back to like a different page in Google Classroom. I'll open my assignment problems, open that in a new window as well. And then I've attached a Math Antics YouTube video that's 8 minutes long that explains this all as well. And then also there's your answer sheet that I've made a copy for each of you to write your answers on. But I will go to the study guide instructions if it will load. So again, we're doing proportional equations. Instructions at the top say, in a percent proportion, one of the numbers called the part is being compared to the whole quantity called the base. So like the part would be the numerator and the base would be the denominator. The other ratio is the percent written as a fraction whose base is 100. As we know, percents means out of 100, so our denominator is 100. And then we'll put a variable on top and solve for it. So if we're given this example, it says find each percent. 12 is what percent of 16? Well, if we have 12 out of 16, that equals something out of 100. We're solving for what percent is this. So we'll put a P for the percent value or whatever. And then as usual, we cross multiply. We go 100 times 12 on, now that's on one side of the equation. We go 16 times P on the other side. And 12 times 100 is 1200 equals P times 16, or 16 times P. You can write it like that. And then now our equation says 1200 equals 16 times P. We want to get the variable P by itself. It's attached to the 16 by multiplication, which we undo with division. So we divide both sides by 16, because what you do to one side, you do to the other. And then when we have P by itself, we'll just do 1200 divided by 16, you get 75. So 12 is 75% of 16. The next problem says what percent of 8 is 7. So we got to figure out what the percent is. So we write P or X or whatever variable you prefer out of 100 equals 7 out of 8. And then you cross multiply. You get 8 times P on one side equals 100 times 7 on the other side. They flipped it around on you. They instead of just going straight down like we usually do. But anyways, you get 100 times 7 is 700 equals P times 8, same as 8 times P. Just write the number first. So then we have 700 equals 8 times P, and we divide both sides by 8. When we do that, we get P by itself on one side of the equation, or the equals side, and 700 divided by 8 is 87.5. So 87.5% of 8 is 7. Oh, didn't mean to zoom. Okay. Next one, what number is 1.4% of 15? Well, in this case, we know the percent, so instead of putting a variable up above the 100, we're going to put our 1.4 up there because that's 1.4%, which means 1.4 out of 100 equals what number of 15. So we don't know that number out of 15. So we'll put a variable. They chose A out of 15. We cross multiply. We get A times 100 equals 15 times 1.4. which simplifies down to 100 times a equals 15 times 1.4 is 21. And then we divide both sides by what is attached to the variable on the one side, which is 100, to get that variable by itself. If you divide 21 divided by 100, you get 0.21. So 0.21 is 1.4% of 15. 225 is 36% of what number? So with these problems, you just really have to pay attention to how they're written. So if we know the percent, 36%, then we have one of our fractions. 36 out of 100 equals 225 of what number? So we write 225 out of, we don't know, so we put a variable. And we go ahead and we cross multiply. On one side, we have 100 times b. No, I'm sorry, I was speaking wrong. So they kind of set this up funny. And I'm not sure why they did it this way. But anyways, you would have 100 times b on one side equals 225 times 36 on the other. Simplify those, you get 22,500 equals 36 times b. Divide by 36 on both sides, you get the variable b by itself equals 625. So 225 is 36% of 625. Let's go ahead and do some of the problems. So it says use the percent proportion to solve each problem and then round to the nearest tenth. So 64 is what percent of 200? So we don't know what the percentage is. So we'll go to my smooth draw, set up our proportional equation. If we don't know what the percentage is, we'll put the x out of 100 equals, I think it was 64 out of 200. 64 out of 200. And then now that you have your proportional equation, you cross multiply. 100 times 64 is 6,400. 200 times x is 200 times x. Now we have to just get the variable x by itself, so we divide by what's attached to it by multiplication. Divide by 200 on both sides. And you can use a calculator if you want to. That cancels because it essentially equals 1 times x, and that's the same as just x. 1 times any number is just that number. And then 6,400 divided by 2, I believe, is 32. Double check. 6,400 divided by 200. Boy. 32, yep, okay. So then I go to my answer sheet. For number 1, I got 32. And I could elaborate, go back to my problem, or I could rewrite it like 64 is 32% of 200 if I wanted to be really thorough in my answer like the mathematics guy was. But I don't have to, you can just write 32. Or you could write 32%, that'd be better. Okay, let's do one more before my video gets too long. Oh, don't save it. What percent of 12 is 9? What percent? So we don't know what the percent is. We know percent are always out of 100. Of 12, so if like of precedes the number, or it goes right before the number, then you'll write that number on the bottom. Of 12 is 9. Cross multiply. 100 times 9 is 900. Equals 12 times x is 12 times x. We divide both sides by whatever is attached to the variable, which is 12. So that then we have the variable by itself. 900 divided by 12. 75%. So go to my answer sheet. Right, 75%. If I wanted to be more thorough, I could say 9 is 75% of 12. Explain this a little more. So 9/12, what we're essentially saying here is that 9/12 is equal to 75 out of 100. And what we could do if we wanted is we could think about this a few ways. We could reduce this, and we could reduce this all the way down to 3/4. If we know like a basic idea, this is going to be ugly, of fractions and how some are equivalent. So let's just say, okay, I'm trying my best here. Work with me. We cut this up into 12 pieces because there. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. So if I had 9 of these 12 pieces colored in, pretend it's 9 out of 12. And I cut these up in even smaller pieces. I could cut these up so that they were so small that I had 100 pieces, but it would still be 90 or 75 shaded in if I were to go back and recount them, because these are equal. Or I can just think like 9/12. I could have drawn that better. I'll do it better if you come to class, okay? But I don't want this video to be 12 years long. So good luck with this. And the hardest part is setting up the equation, so just read it very carefully. Come to class.